Good morning. My name is Jim Druckman, President and CEO of the New York Design Center and board member of the Horticultural Society of New York. I'm very pleased to welcome you to the fourth conversation in our View from the Veranda series, developed and organized with Veranda magazine and Design Center Chelsea Harbor, London. View from the Veranda invites experts from all over the world to share their perspectives on design as it relates to the outdoors and the intersection of indoor-outdoor living. Today's conversation will discuss the art of hospitality and how to gather creatively in 2021. I am thrilled to introduce Steele Marcoux, editor-in-chief of Veranda magazine, and Frances Schultz, author, artist, journalist, and one of the country's best party hosts. And I hope you all enjoy. Thank you for attending.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much, Jim, for that kind introduction. I want to start by thanking our amazing hosts, the New York Design Center and Chelsea Harbor. And of course, I would be remiss not to mention the Horticultural Society of New York, for whom this talk series is meant to support. I also want to thank our audience for tuning in, and our incredible guest today, Frances Schultz, a longtime friend of Veranda. Frances, thank you so much for joining today. As Jim mentioned, Frances is a journalist and an author, but she's also what I like to call a connoisseur of the good life. And here I'm talking design, decoration, food, entertaining, travel, and of course, style. She has been a contributing editor for all the best magazines, including Flower Magazine, House Beautiful, and our very own Veranda. And she has also written for all of my other favorite publications, including the Wall Street Journal and Town and Country. A Southerner, which you'll probably be able to tell by her accent, Frances now lives in Southern California and New York, but we're gonna get to more on that in a little bit. For now, let's dive into our conversation with Frances. Frances, I'm going to turn it over to you to share your screen.
Okay.
Lord, and I
forgot in the creek don't rise. What?
While Frances is working on that, I forgot to mention, if you have a question today, please submit it using the Q&A button, and I'm going to try to get to all of your questions as we are going through Frances's slides. So no need to wait till the end. Go ahead and submit your questions as you have them. Of course, Frances has the cover of her latest beautiful book, California Cooking in Southern Style, up now. And I want to start by asking Frances, if are you ready for me to dive into our conversation?
I am. Let me make sure. I also want to say I am so proud to have written for Veranda, probably for longer, Steele, than you've been alive. And I'm also a very proud member of the Board of Trustees of the Horticulture Society.
Right. Yes.
Of New York. And
long-time supporter.
Okay, now can y'all see the thing? Can y'all see the slides?
It looks great.
Okay. And okay, there we go. This is a prettier one to have up. Beautiful as my book is. This is more fun. Okay.
Well, so, and this is a perfect visual to go with the question that that I'm kind of most intrigued to ask you, which is, given the challenging times that we've had over the last 12 to 15 months, I kind of want to know how you've been navigating this, what could be described or thought of as, the superficiality of setting a beautiful table, pressing linens, arranging flowers. With all of the uncertainty and fear and loss, frankly, that we have all been facing, how do you make time for this, and how do you make this important?
Well, it's such a good question, and of course, it's been a big topic for all of us in the design world. The sort of overarching question is, does beauty matter? And what we're talking about here is making things beautiful. And the tagline of my website is celebrating beauty in everyday living. And I would only say that the more dark the times we're in, the more light we need to bring to them. So of course, beauty matters. How can it not? Beauty is a harmony between the senses and the soul. It's how they speak to each other. And I think there's God in that. I think there's divinity in that. And the more of that we can create in our lives, I think the better. So So to your point, this was a question I did ask myself when I sat down to write this article for Flower Magazine some months ago. And, I had to depart from my usual sort of glib and carefree tone, at least to acknowledge the times that we're in, and to address how stark and poignant a reminder, writing this story was, and our situation is, to how deep is our longing for the need to gather. As I wrote in my book, California Cooking in Southern Style, to gather friends and family at the table is to hold a sacred space in which we nourish not just our bodies, but we feed our souls. And I think now we appreciate more than ever the intention we hold around that, and the mindfulness that's important to bring to it. But anyway, let's click on, because this was fun, and we can enjoy until we can all gather again. If vicariously we can enjoy these things called dinner parties.
I remember you all shot this before the pandemic, right? So then of course you're going back to write the article, and you're having to sort of put it in this new context.
Yes, completely, absolutely. And of course, the idea of a dinner party, writing it then would have created a scandal, but we create scandal whenever we can, don't we?
The best kind of scandal. Fresh melons.
When all else fails, cut a watermelon in half and hold them up to your chest. But meanwhile, we have found new ways to be together, haven't we? Listen, I must apologize. I'm staying in a friend's apartment in New York. And speaking of decorating, today's surprise to me is the day they are installing the headboard and new curtains. So we have a little background noise. I apologize. I will holler. But anyway, we found new ways. We found new ways to be together. And of course, one of them is Zoom. And I think we're all a bit Zoom weary, but at first it was a novel idea, and it was quite fun. And I had put together this dinner party for a KTLA, the big local television station in LA, and it was just shut down the minute we were practically ready to go on camera. So I had done all this work, and I thought, well, heck, I'm gonna just do it anyway. So we did it with a group of friends, and I wanted to show you. Let me find my things. I wanted to show you. So to go back to the centerpiece here, and then to show you how I did it, because it was such a simple thing. It was just a plastic tray with some pin frogs. You see those on the side. And then I did a little moss to cover up the works, as we say in the flower arranging business. And then I just stuck flowers into the pin frogs.
Oh,
and
wow.
then clipped leaves from houseplants that I got at the grocery store. And they're still living, which is a miracle. But anyway, just clipped leaves from house plants from the grocery store and stuck those in. So it sort of looks like a garden. And I thought it was very effective and fun. And I kind of got that idea from my friend Cultivated by Kristen Gale. If anybody follows her on Instagram, she's wonderful.
Where did you find the little butterfly?
You can get these things on the internet. Just put in butterflies
on a steak or something.
And yes, and I'm always they're kind of cheesy, but I'm always putting them in flower arrangements just because I love butterflies. And we found ways to gather outside, that we hadn't before. This was a workshop that we did at the ranch, and we were all masked up and careful, but we were able to do it without actually dying. And each person, I bring this up too, because it was a fun way to have a gathering. Each person brought her own container and created her own flower arrangement from the things that we had on offer. And then we put them down the center of the table, and that was our centerpiece. So
beautiful.
So that was fun. Anyway, so there I am in Southern California, and Steele, you were teeing up a little bit about how I got there.
That's right. Yes. I was an big time enthusiast follower of the Bee Cottage column in House Beautiful. And And just to give a little more context to this, Frances actually moved to New York, I believe in 2000, is that about right? To be the New York-based editor for Veranda, which was at the time still based in Atlanta, my hometown. In New York, she not only, she contributed to Veranda for many years, but she also began contributing to our sister publication, House Beautiful, with a kind of my favorite thing in magazine world, a serial column, kind of chronicling the renovation of her house in the Hamptons, the cottage, which is the subject of this, the cover of her book. So, again, I was following along, quite closely with all of that, but now you're in Southern California. How in the world did you get there?
I know. Okay, well, we're going to tie all this together. For those of you who aren't familiar, we'll just do a quick whistle-stop tour through Bee Cottage. And I do want to point out the subtitle. There's Bee Cottage, which is in East Hampton, and I no longer own it. The subtitle, How I Made a Muddle of Things and Decorated My Way Back to Happiness.
It's a mantra. I love it.
Anyway, yeah, it's okay in retrospect, but it was not that much fun at the time. Anyhow, but just to, so as Steele mentioned, the book began as a series of columns, as a series for House Beautiful, and this was the living room as was originally shot by House Beautiful some years ago. And as things do, it evolved into this.
So beautiful.
And the book itself evolved from this sort of decorating book into a personal memoir. And that is the muddle part of the subtitle, which, trust me, was not an exaggeration. But the theme of the book, if there is one, really is about, I mean, yes, it's about decorating, and yes, it's partly my story, but it's about how our living spaces are a reflection of ourselves, of our inner selves, and how transforming the way we live can also transform the way we are, the way we are and how we are in the way we live. So, and still, of course, this is something you and I have really devoted our lives to and our careers to.
True.
If I wonder, is that a silver lining in the pandemic, that we have deepened our relationship with our living spaces, and which have also become our working spaces? But what's been your experience I'm curious.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I think being at home and deepening our relationship with home and our environments like that has not only prompted us to re-examine our living spaces, but to your point, who we are and how we want to live and how we want our spaces to reflect that. One of my favorite quotes of all time is from Gloria Vanderbilt, which is, "Decorating is autobiography." 3 words. And honestly, sometimes I feel like that could be the tagline for Veranda. There's just, there's a lot you could do with that. But anyway, I made a note of that because your comment reminded me of that quote from her.
And I actually, with a professional organizer from here in New York named Barbara Reich, we gave a couple of workshops on this very, very thing, and called them Clarity Begins at Home. But anyway, that's, to be continued. And let's hope that gives us, that we also take courage in the boldness with which we approach our living spaces. And I'm like, if you want to paint the ceiling of your butler's pantry bright turquoise, girl, you just go right on.
Go right ahead. I love it. Oh, this is one of my favorite rooms.
Everybody loves this room. That was, of course, using up the leftover paint from this room. But there is a little note here about, this room is tiny. I mean, when I talk about this room, it's not big enough to swing a cat in. It's like 9 by 12. And we've painted it this dark color, ceiling, walls, and everything. And it's, I don't know, Steele, do you want to talk about the sort of counterintuitive, wonder of painting a small space a dark color?
Well, I think that's what I'm so drawn to about it, is that seeing the paint go all the way onto the ceiling, and even in the dormer window, I mean, just every surface, it becomes like a little jewel box somehow. And, I think that paired with the lamps and with the red shades, it just, there's so much intrigue. I love it.
Well, sweet. And it's very, very cozy. And it's also, I read this once and it makes total sense. A dark color, you don't see shadows as much.
I love that.
So all the corners and the angles and the nooks and crannies all just don't show as much. So they seem to recede.
That's
So
well, and I actually, during the past year, I painted a room a very dark color. My children thought it was black, but it's dark brown. I'm looking at it now. I noticed, I did it in the heat of summer, and I noticed that it feels cooler. A dark room actually feels cooler in the summer, which has been, I expected it to feel cozier in the winter, but I loved that it felt cooler in the summer.
Well, I guess you don't have the heat and the sun and the light, so
Glare, yeah.
darkness is cooler, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, well, we'll carry on. So this was the garden of Bee Cottage.
So beautiful.
I must say, when it looks like this, I would walk outside in my prettiest bathrobe and pretend like I was Caroline Rome. I would just, anyway.
Just incredible.
It was, I didn't always look like that, but for about 5 minutes a season, it was pretty.
Amazing.
It was also a beautiful place to have a party. And this
how long did you own this house? I can't remember.
Almost 10 years.
10 years. Okay.
8 years, 10 years. Yeah. There was a little bit of a renovation involved, so I was back and forth. But I did love to have little parties in the garden. And
the garden looks so well established. It's almost like it looks like you were there 20 years or something.
Well, thank you. It was small, and so I was able to sort of concentrate a lot of stuff in a smaller space. And of course, there are a lot of annuals in that garden. One thing I love about living in Southern California is that dahlias are perennial.
Oh, you are so lucky.
But anyway,
that'll save you some time.
I know. But otherwise, we're sort of gardening in the desert there. But anyway, I showed this slide of the soup in the coffee cups for 2 reasons. One is many of us have these beautiful, coffee cups from our wedding china that we don't seem to use anymore because everybody uses mugs now. But this is a great and very sort of pandemic friendly way to serve either a soup course as a first course or to pass as an hors d'oeuvre. So get your
That's a charming idea. Past hors d'oeuvre. I love that.
And use them. And I show you this pergola because I promised I was going to tie this whole story together. And the pergola was really the only structural change I made to the house, and it virtually doubled our living space. And it has a canvas awning above and heaters, built-in heaters overhead. So it not only doubled the living space, it doubled the amount of time, the number of days that we could spend out there.
That's great.
So the heaters overhead were a gift in chapter 25 of the book from my then new boyfriend, who I meet in chapter 12 of the book. And so just stay with me because we're coming. But anyway, thanks to the heaters and to the pergola and the awning, we can entertain outside even when the weather is less than ideal. You just put on a brave smile and a really sexy outfit. Right?
Here it's like you're in England all of a sudden.
I know. Yeah. Well, East Hampton gets like that a little bit.
It does.
And rain or shine, I had these goofy fountains in the pool that I love to turn on. Honey, that's the medium setting. They go clear on up to the Bellagio in Las Vegas. And they just make me laugh. They made me laugh every time I turned them on. And they were always a reminder not to take myself, my garden, my house, my parties too seriously.
I love it.
To go with the flow. Because going with the flow, as we all know, is an important rule in entertaining and in life. And definitely in marriage. So tying it together, the fellow I had the blind date with in chapter 12 of the Bee Cottage story is the one who gave me the heaters in chapter 25 and is the one that I'm married to in chapter now. The bride and groom from AARP.
I love it.
Yes.
And he's the reason for California.
He's the reason for California. I'm gonna come back to that too. Anyway, they say when a door closes, a window opens, and I have to say the view from California is beautiful. And I've been so inspired by it that I have taken up painting again. I did when I was younger, and these are all scenes
Just the colors, the
And-
California palette.
And I'm not leaving them on the screen too long. I don't want you to look too closely. But this is not in the ranch. It's a little lake nearby. But it's funny. I'm just realizing how I think in terms of everything, like a painting. You know,
Like
you
a
and I.
like a composition almost.
Yes, you asked me about that earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting how, as an artist, how and kind of returning to art and painting, how has that changed the way you see things and see the world?
Well, I guess I just realized that, you know, everything is about composition and color and texture and
Mhm.
value and shape and light and shadow and bringing it all together. You know, even the guest list, right? Even the guest, you know, you have the quiet one, the loud one, the funny one, the serious one, the famous one, the one who has no idea who the famous one is.
I
You know,
love it.
all of those, you know, you want to mix together, which is so nice. Anyway, and I did the same approach with creating these menus that I did for each sort of opening of the book chapter.
So
I had fun with these little things, and this was just a welcome party for a young couple who was getting married in the
beautiful.
Valley. And I must credit Mindy Rice. Some of you may follow her. Mindy Rice is a wonderful floral and party designer who's our neighbor in Santa Ynez. And she helped me with this party.
This I loved what's happening around the tree branches.
Isn't that fun? I know they were wrapped years ago, and finally they busted out of the wrapping, so we had to redo them. They're
Oh
these
my
two giant trees in what we call this old picnic area around the ranch. I don't know why they call it the old picnic area, but anyway, they're very fun and very pretty. Those beautiful oak trees have such wonderful shapes. So
Mhm.
so that was fun, and this is the view from there.
Wow. Wow.
So it's green right now. It was green when I left, but it's brown most of the year, alas, except for the vineyards, of course. And this is our house, this blurry picture. I'm sorry for the blurry picture. But this is Home Sweet Home. And I also refer to it sometimes as a cousin of the Temple of Dinder. Yes, so as I mentioned, the fellow I'm married to in chapter now is the one who brought me to California. So we'll back up just a few years now. When we were first seeing each other, we'd been seeing each other for about a year. We weren't married yet. And it seemed like a good idea to have 45 for Thanksgiving
Oh my.
seated.
Oh my. Oh my.
Now, yes, where is a good pandemic when you need one? Right?
Exactly.
And may I also tell you that nothing inspires your creativity quite like the knowledge that your then boyfriend's beloved first wife is also coming for dinner.
I was going to ask how many people in this seating chart are family.
Yes, a lot of them. And then it's basically two families. It's our family and another family.
Okay.
Anyway, she came that year. I was, of course, a nervous wreck and had to impress her and everybody else. And she came every year after that as well. But by then, you know what? We were old friends by then, and it was wonderful.
That is amazing and very inspiring.
She was fantastic. She's no longer with us, sadly, but she was wonderful. So we're going to get to later also talking about things that always work in entertaining. Yes. And I do think birch bark always works. Never pass up a good sale on birch bark.
Beautiful. Did you use it in the picture, the previous picture? Are the plantings and flowers kind of tucked in?
They are. I sort of cut it in half and separated it.
I love that.
And I put glass containers inside.
Brilliant.
And then stuck moss and stuff in the glass containers. So yeah, that worked pretty well. I had no idea what I was doing as usual, but anyway, moss and greenery and all that stuff, all that goes a long way, right? And fruit and things that you can mix in besides flowers are also fun. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't know where I got these turkeys from, some totally random place on the internet, but I have two of them, and the children love them, you know.
I love them.
Of the door. And, you know, we will have parties again.
Yes, we
But
will.
this is what it's looked like most of the year. And I
You
will say, we love when everybody comes, right? But we love it when they go home, and then we're back to Mr. and Mrs. Livewire by the fire. That's us.
That's so, I mean, I do think that that is an inspiring moment. And again, one of those, to use a kind of overused phrase, but a silver lining, if you will, is rediscovering your house and rediscovering some of those moments around the house. Like, yes, you can set up a table for two by the fire, and you can, you know, carve out spots for romantic, intimate dinners that you may have never considered before. You know, abandon the dining table, move around. That's one of those things I really love.
And we love it. It's so cozy. And this is, I'll refer to this later, this is sort of a gigantic room. And,
That's amazing.
you know, we sort of feel like Nancy and Ronald Reagan, they used to show them with their TV trays.
I love it. I love it.
It's fun.
I love it.
Anyhow, but we will get back to parties again, won't we? And it's always nice to create a gathering and to create a sense of occasion around a gathering, you know, to celebrate something.
To celebrate special occasions.
Yes, or no occasion at all.
Or no occasion.
But we did have this one party for celebrating my husband's book. We were talking the other day. I mean, everybody has a book out these days, right? So I sort of bullied my husband into writing autobiography, and this, which was wonderful, is called Talking Big. And you know how an Iowa farm boy make good, blah blah blah. Anyway, so we had this wonderful little party at the ranch for him, and so now we'll begin talking about things that always work. You've got to share your trick with the cookies. Some of which are serious and some of which aren't. I wish I knew what the trick was with the cookies, but anyway, cookies with pictures on them always work. They're just wonderful. I think they're just little miracles, and sweet, several sweet people who've given me parties for Bee Cottage Story. I have more than one cookie with the Bee Cottage cover on it. Anyway, that's the cover of Talking Big. I love it. And I think funny Mae West sayings always work too. Another good fallback. Yes, like, I don't know much about politics, but I know a good party man when I see one. So an important life skill. For the party man or woman in all of us, we'll sort of move on to some of my favorite tips. When you're doing a buffet, which of course has been verboten in the last year, but we will do them again. I think the secret is to make them look really full, to create this sort of visual sense of abundance, and not necessarily with more food than you need, but with, you know, with greenery, with condiments, with wine bottles, with pitchers of water, with pretty even figurines and things, and a printed or an embroidered tablecloth also helps create that sense of visual sort of fullness. And, you know, I was thinking last night, I have some wonderful vintage books about entertaining, and these ones from the 60s of these very, you know, famous fancy people, but the things look so bare, don't they? A little spare, and sometimes, I mean, they're elegant, but sometimes they look quite spare. And then I thought, you know, that's one of the many geniuses that was Martha Stewart. She, to my mind, and I could be wrong about this, I'm sure lots of people did it, but I mean, she is the one who really started piling on baskets and gobs of things. And I totally agree. No, I totally agree. She really visually, she made things so exciting and abundant and full and rich. And I think that's one of the many things she's given us. But I'm glad you mentioned the tablecloth here, because that was what I noticed first and foremost, is the layering that even just a patterned tablecloth can add. As you say, it's not necessarily cramming on all the food. It's just kind of that visual abundance. Right. And, you know, and we know this from trying to photograph tables. Exactly. Very difficult to photograph. They need to really be full. They have to be very full in order to photograph them. Is that your
Absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, too, you can look at Instagram these days and you say everybody has a book, everybody also has a table linens line.
Yeah.
And if you look at what people are doing these days with table linens, they're piling on the color and the pattern, I think in part to make it sort of visually attractive for Instagram, where the photo is so small, but it looks so rich. You know, you're going to scroll right by a kind of spare. It's like everybody has a table linen line or a board business where they're, you know, curating like a charcuterie board for you, you know, whatever. And those boards look so abundant.
Right, kind of like this one. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. And plate, I mean, if you're gonna have a pimento cheese sandwich, it's on a plate, that's on another plate, that's on another plate, that's on a napkin, that's on a this, that's on that. I mean, it's hilarious. But anyway, but it is pretty.
Totally.
It is.
So pretty.
So of course we weren't supposed to do this last year either, but singing always works to liven up a party. And I had this song commissioned for my husband based on his book, and
Oh my gosh.
we had a little chorus whipped up from the my church.
I love it. I love it. Did you get guests to sing?
I had sort of a last minute flash chorus.
Okay.
Made up of members of the St. Mark's Episcopal Church.
I love it.
They
I
were
love it.
Sweet to come.
That's awesome.
And,
I love it.
You know, I think dancing always works too, doesn't it?
Once they're singing, there might as well be dancing.
Yeah, exactly. Even if you look completely dorky doing it, which of course I do.
No, you do not.
Dancer.
Uh-huh.
But there's always this.
So that's how you can get people to dance.
Yes. And you do not look dorky, I promise, says Vodka. Anyway.
I love it.
We had a little bit of a dance. And then we had a small group come inside for a dinner. This was around Christmas time. And this is one of the 2 mantles I did for our mantle. And I mentioned earlier, this room is about 30 feet by 30 feet by 30 feet. I mean, it's just cavernous. And decorating for this room is like being on the altar guild, speaking of church, for the Temple of Dender. But that's my next thing that always works, which is big, and a lot of it always works.
And do you do like a lot of one thing and or do you like a lot of different things?
Well, we're coming to that. I'm glad you did that. We didn't even practice this, y'all. Simple also always works. And yes, one thing and a lot of it always works. And don't be bad mouthing carnations, because when you forgot to place your flower order and that's all they have left, or that's all they have at the grocery store, honey, you need to love the one you're with. So there we are, carnations. And we had done 3 book parties in 3 cities and 3 dinner parties in 3 weeks. And I was kind of exhausted. Yeah. So I did want to keep this simple, but it doesn't look it is simple, but it doesn't look that simple.
No,
you know?
it feels
I'm all
like
about that.
There's a level of drama somehow, even, I mean, I suppose you say simple because it's one flower, but it doesn't look simple. And how do you keep it from looking, how do you keep simple from looking basic?
And some greenery. Well, you just tart it up a little bit, don't you? I mean, I found these paper hats like 2 days before and decided to a lot of these things are done in the last minute, but I use some as place cards and use some as little party hats for the flower arrangements.
They're so cute.
And that's another thing that always works is just something just a little bit silly. Mm-hmm. Because people put on the hats, they put on the funny little glasses and they laugh and somebody goes, ha! And it's funny for about 30 seconds, but it does lighten the mood and it gives everybody permission to just relax a little bit, and you sort of think to yourself, oh, so it's going to be like that, is it? Somebody's going to right off the bat. And
this isn't some stuffy, buttoned up affair.
Exactly.
I love it.
And I know you and I wanted to mention seating.
Yes. What's your point of view when it comes to seating? I mean, do you like assigned seating or are you more laissez-faire when it comes to seating arrangements?
I am absolutely about seating. Please do it. I think it saves a lot of awkwardness, people sort of lurching around trying to figure out where they're going to sit. And it saves, you know, it's almost like choosing teams. It saves people's feelings getting hurt because somebody doesn't sit beside them or somebody, you know, it's so, well, I say so easy to do, it can be so easy to do, but it really is such an important effort. I mean, if you're having a big group, yes, use place cards, but if not, I mean, even if you have 6 people, just scratch it on the back of a napkin and just have a plan.
I love it. No, the worst feeling is when you get to a dinner party and you feel like, you know, the cool kids have already grouped on one side of the table and you've been left out of that, or, you know, it's so awkward.
It's terrible.
So you're sparing a lot of hurt feelings.
But you bring up another point, which is, yes, manners are about kindness at the end of the day. Manners are about kindness. Etiquette is about making things pretty, but also about manners and ultimately about kindness. But another note about seating, and I have a friend who puts this rather bluntly, and I will just repeat her words. I wouldn't put it this way myself, but I'm about to now, which is, when you are seating, I believe in putting kindred spirits together, keeping kindred.
Okay.
So I do not put the live wire next to the wallflower, next to this. In other words, as my friend says, just seat the boars together.
I love it. I love it. Why does that always work? I mean, is it that?
Well, for one thing, they don't know they're boars, right?
Right.
And again, it's just that they're kindred spirits. And I think people, particularly when they're in a social situation, if they're not super social, you know, or particularly glib or poised, they're a little bit like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah.
And I think if you don't feel this pressure to perform, oh, I'm sitting next to the cleverest, most articulate person in the room, I'm absolutely terrified.
Right.
And they don't feel that. And so again, it just allows them to relax. And I believe in the host or hostess being a little bit bossy, you know, steer the conversation, shut down the ones that need to be shut down.
Totally.
You know, those ones.
I can picture them.
And, you know, and facilitate introductions and things like that. But yeah, so you can be bossy as hostess, but definitely tell them where to sit. I mean, definitely.
That's such a good tip.
So now we'll move on, in case you're wondering if a neon sign outside your house always works. The answer is, yeah, pretty well.
How did you all come up with this name?
This is crazy. And I'll come back to that. But this was for another party, and we had it made for another party. So we didn't want to throw it away, right? I mean, we were recycling in California, totally. But anyway, but we figured out a way to rig it up outside the front door. You can do things like this when you live in the country.
I love it.
And Tom says, my husband says, when people drive in and they see that sign, honey, they're ready to play.
That's right. It certainly sets the tone.
And they come in that way. So yeah, neon signs always work.
I love it.
Balloons always work.
Always.
They're cheap.
Always.
And walking into a room full of a bunch of balloons, you think, well, this is going to be fun.
You know it's going to be fun from the get-go.
And, you know, anything corny like that, sprinkles, glitter, sequins, you know, cheesy starlight projector things.
I was going to say, this looks like there's a disco ball rigged up somewhere.
Again, some random thing on the internet, but it was pretty funny. Yeah, and I don't even know what to call it, but
I love it. I love it.
And these crystal pagodas, you know, I'll say one thing about catalogs. If you see something you love in a catalog that's cool, get it and don't avoid it because you think, oh, it'll be everywhere and everybody will know it came from a catalog and blah, blah, blah. I think these crystal pagodas are the prettiest things I've ever seen. And they were designed by Bunny Williams for Ballard Designs. And I mean, that was the 1 year you saw them. So
that's right. And you can use those for so many different settings.
Absolutely. And earrings occasionally.
I love it.
If you want. So a little something unexpected always works too. And this is another thing that's a very, you know, sort of pandemic friendly way to amuse ourselves in terms of creating novelty. We just brought the whole living room outside.
That is so genius.
for this party. I had to make space inside for tables. I don't like to do that, but anyway, I needed to do it this time and just brought the whole thing outside.
Like, here comes the sofa, I'm bringing it outside.
All of it. And so
Lamps, I love it.
yeah, exactly. But the problem with that is it does rather invite people to linger.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, Ann Landers famously mentioned that there are two kinds of people at a party, those who want to stay and those who want to leave. And the trouble is they're usually married to each other.
Oh man, that's where all of the tension springs from, that in exact dichotomy right there. I love it.
You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, but speaking of sweethearts, you asked about one thing used a lot.
Yes.
And I'm a big fan of that. And this is a good example. These are just clear wine bottles.
Amazing.
And a few other clear containers,
yeah,
and jelly jars in there with nothing but tulips and cherry blossom branches.
It's so clever just to tuck the branch right into a wine bottle.
I mean, just yes. And you know, you can't see, you know, the rule is you're supposed to be able to see over it. You can't see over, but you can certainly see through it.
Exactly.
So, you know, it's a little bit of a hi, but it worked. And then again, in the interest of making the table look full, I sprinkle they're silk flower petals.
Wow, I would have never
real
known.
ones too, but the real ones will curl up and shrivel by the end of the night. And so I think, do we think it's okay to have a little something artificial?
Oh, for sure, especially mixed into so much, you know, live or cut, you know, the real deal.
Yeah, I think so too. Even Caroline Run, speaking of, does it sometimes. So so that always works.
I mean, again, one of the things that I love about your settings is the high-low. You've got the artificial petals, but then your silver goblets, and it just the whole thing. And you know, silver goblets next to an empty clear wine bottle. I love that.
Well, and you know, I'm all about high-low because let's face it, that's how most of us roll.
That's how we live.
Yeah. Chocolate always works.
Chocolate always works.
Really easy recipe, by the way. It's called Deep Dark Chocolate Mystery.
I love it. Deep Dark Chocolate Mystery. I love it.
Deep Dark Chocolate Mystery. Yes, most of the names of the recipes are not so dramatic, but you know, one does rather like drama, and I do like to create drama, as you mentioned, on a table.
I love it.
And one of the ways is I love a long thing. You know, it's like a French wedding or something. I love a long, narrow banquet table. This is in our alley of olive trees next to our house, which is like your dark room. It's always cool there. I think the shade it creates, but the dapple light is always so pretty.
Oh, so pretty.
That was
it looks like speaking of abundance, seeing how many photos you have it looks like you all do this every week.
Well, you know, it's not as hard as it looks, to tell you the truth. I mean, yes, it's an effort. Don't let anybody tell you differently. But so here's another trick that I love. You can't really see the tablecloth, but you can see a little bit that it's printed, right? That it's a print.
Mm-hmm.
And I order fabric from a discount fabric store called the one I had just happened to have used is fabric.com.
Love it.
They're like most interiors fabrics. They come in 54 inches wide.
Sure.
Honey, I just ordered 20 yards of that.
Roll it out.
And just unroll it. And I duct tape the ends. I do not sew a stitch or iron an inch. And that is my kind of craft project. So, and then you've got these, you know, I can cut them up. I can have a round made. I can have a runner made from it. I can do, you know, I can be like Scarlett. I can make a dress out of it. You know, I love anything. So that always works. This was Easter, and this is my completely over decorated lamb roast. It looks like it, you know, it could be its own float in the Mardi Gras parade or something. But this is
love this.
This was another super simple. These are just red pennies. And again, more fun with fabric from the fabric.com discount fabric store. And I just rolled it out and that worked. But I also, this was a birthday party some years ago, but clearly, as you can see, I did not overspend on the fabric or the flowers or the balloons.
I love that.
So I learned at this party that my cardinal rule for decorating at the ranch, where everything is big and overscale, but has become my rule in general, is get as much as you think you need, which would have been like 10 times more than this, and then get some more.
And then get some more of that.
So that's,
but I mean, even, I can envision the space with more red balloons, but it's still so festive. And I feel like, a common theme that's emerging from all of your sort of secrets to what works is it doesn't always have to be perfect.
well, you're right. And that it doesn't. And but guess what? People don't care.
They probably don't even notice.
Our parties, our flowers, our souffles often aren't perfect, and that is okay. And I sometimes think it's even better because, people expect Steele Marcoux to have some perfect something, or they expect maybe me to. I don't know, maybe not so much me, but
you more than me. You more.
But people like to be reminded that they're not the only ones here who are human,
Right.
and that,
Absolutely.
we all sometimes mess up, and people are just like you say, honey, they are happy to be invited. They're happy not to do it themselves.
Exactly.
Happy to give grace and to receive it.
Indeed. Yeah.
You know,
I love that. I also feel like this photo illustrates that stripes always work.
Stripes do always work. I was going to say fortune tellers always work too. That was very funny. I mean, like, I found her through the local woo-woo bookstore, and she was wonderful. Honey, we had a priest, a like cattle rancher, and a businessman. All these people at this party, they were all lined up. They couldn't wait to talk.
They had their palms read?
Yes, they all did. They couldn't wait. They couldn't wait. And a little performance always works.
Oh, for sure.
This was a menu. Each chapter has a menu, and the book is actually, the table of contents is organized by menu. So it makes it a little easier to hunt for certain kinds of courses. And this was,
I think that's so clever to organize it by menu, because that's how people think. They're not necessarily looking for a recipe. They're looking for a whole.
Well, or what to have with something,
Exactly.
What to have with this. And so when you can look and see in the table of contents, the main course, the sides, the desserts, it just, to me, is just so much easier than digging through the index, or even
it's much easier to navigate that way.
I hope so.
This is gorgeous.
Anyway, well, thank you. And I was sort of proud of that flower arrangement. I had so much fun doing it with the persimmons, which grow on trees, actually. But we rolled out the red carpet for this benefit for the church, and it was a sort of night at the opera.
I love it.
And you just saw our beautiful Nicole.
I love using the sheet music too. That's so it's beautiful.
Yeah, that was kind of fun. And anyway, this red carpet thing, I mean, that's hilarious. And again, that's something you can order from the internet very inexpensively. So and, and it gives a sense of arrival. I was going to have the place cards, the seating cards on this table, but they all blew away about an hour before the party. So I just left it there as a sort of greeting present, welcome present. But when you see that and people arrive to it, they think, they just sort of stand a little bit taller, and then we ask them to dress up.
I was going to ask you, I mean, you live in Southern California, which, is, you've got the climate to be outside and all that, but how do you, and there, look, here you are in this very elegant setting. How do you feel about this sort of turn towards the casual? And how do you steer away from that when you have a party?
California and increasingly the rest of the world is almost pathologically casual now.
Pathologically casual. I love it.
I mean, I think it's gone too far. I just think everybody walking around looking like an unmade bed is just not attractive. And I don't even think it's particularly respectful.
It's not respectful. I
mean, have enough respect for yourself to appreciate who you're looking at in the mirror. And then I think when you show up to me and you're well dressed or put together, or at least well groomed, it sort of tells me that you care enough about what I think about you to have
Right.
made an effort, which means you care about me. You know, it
Exactly.
means you care. It means you care. You care about the
Care.
other person. You care about the setting that you're in, the people who are there, all of it. So anyway, so it's fun to dress up every now and then. And I think it takes your game up a little bit too. I think people are a little brighter. They're a little cleverer. They stand a little taller.
100%. I love that.
See what I
Oh,
mean?
this is hilarious. You can take dressing up to another level.
Right. Costumes are sometimes fun. Costumes always work. I'm not a huge proponent of costumes, but every now and then it's fun, again, to be silly. This was meant to be, since this was this opera night, it was meant to be a sort of Wagner, Valkyrie,
I love it.
the kind of thing, but we look more like escapees from the Game of Thrones.
Amazing.
But anyway, and just to
Okay.
go through this was a sort of a picnic in the vineyard with a tablecloth of newspaper that you just roll up at the end of the night and throw away. And we were having frogmore stew that night. So it was boiled shrimp, corn on the cob, all that stuff you just throw on the table and roll away.
I love it. I love the bandana napkins too.
They're fun. And again, inexpensive and a nice look. A lot of one or two things always works. Again,
Sure.
checks and sunflowers always work, right? Picnics always work.
What about themes? How do you feel about a theme party? Because we've seen a few photos here that feel particularly specific.
I think themes also always work for a party, whether it's a small one or a big one. I think it's good to have sort of a reason to gather, kind of a party with a purpose, as it were,
I love
because it gives people something to connect with. It sparks a connection between them, and it can be a simple theme or an elaborate one, but I mean, it can be, the birthday of Shakespeare or the full moon, and this was a shooting party thing, and our stripes. I'm going to fast forward here, but this was a full moon.
Love that.
Out under a summer moon, and the moon cooperated beautifully. But creating an atmosphere around your theme, or creating conversation, or anything that you might do, again, to spark that connection.
The connection. I never had thought about it that way, but you're right. There's a sort of common ground instantly created with that theme.
It does, and it helps you define your party. It helps you define your guest list. It helps you, it just gives you a framework, but it also gives your gathering a set of center of interest. Again, back to a painting. Painting needs a center of interest. I think so does the party. Anyway, but when you're particularly when you're in an outdoor space, it's nice to create an atmosphere and fill the void with something. And we had ruled out, naked girls on trapezes for liability reasons. So we use these inexpensive paper lanterns that were
lovely,
fun.
So fun.
So I think we're getting, do we have some questions percolating up here?
We've had a lot of great feedback. Mostly people saying that one, that you look beautiful, which you do. And two, that everybody wants to transport themselves to these amazing settings. Some comments about the arrangements being beautiful, but I'd love to take more questions if anybody has specific questions. Here's a good one. So somebody wants to know, who inspired your love of cooking and entertaining, which is a good one.
Oh, my mama.
I love that.
My mama, who was a wonderful cook and a beautiful, sort of effortless hostess, although she was the first to tell you it was a lot of trouble.
She wanted you to know.
One night we said the blessing. It was at Thanksgiving. We always had, 25 or 30 people seated. And she said the blessing, and she said, you get to the part, and the blessing we use in Episcopal churches, and keep us ever mindful of the needs of others. And she said, and keep us ever needful of the minds of others.
I'm going to start repeating that at my house. I love it.
We all were at that point.
Yes.
But anyway, we'll just keep on a little bit here. I can't tell you that a Quonset hut always works, but 72,000 yards of polyester does something.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions too. This is a question that I had. When the pandemic is, but somebody else has asked it. When the pandemic is over, in other words, when it's safe to do so, what is the first party you're going to have?
Gosh, my husband and I have talked about this a little bit.
I imagine.
He wants to have, a cheeseburger at home, and I would kind of love to have a dance. I mean,
I love it. Like a whole ball.
Dance.
Yeah. A dinner dance. I love it.
I don't know that I will, but I would love that. Speaking of dinner dance, this was our rehearsal dinner that was meant to sort of mimic the El Morocco Club of New York, and we called it Club El Rancho, and that's where the sign came from.
I love it.
And and I just, Steele, you and I were talking again too. We love using, Veranda is all about creating beauty and using beautiful things and creating
that China
environment. I know, we love that. And I just think it's so important, particularly now while we're still somewhat housebound, to, people always talk about shopping your closet, shop your house. Like you said, when we first started talking, use your pretty things, use your silver, use your china. What are you saving it for? I hate to tell you.
What are we saving it for?
Use it. Yes.
Do you see, I'm looking at your silver goblets, and you can kind of see, right? You see my We've got another good question. You're having a dinner party and you have omnivores, vegetarians, and vegans. How do you create a menu that pleases everybody? I knew that was going to make it's like the mind blown emoji,
and people do have, I have a nephew who has a lethal peanut allergy. People do have things. So we do need to be mindful of all this. If I know in advance someone is a vegetarian, I'll probably have a vegetarian meal, because I actually love to eat that way. Yeah. And if I don't, if it's a bigger crowd, we have enough other things.
Sure.
We have enough vegetables and this and that, or salad or something to compensate for the meat or the fish course.
I think that makes sense. You just kind of build a well-rounded, you're serving lamb, but you have 3 vegetables with it, and somebody can sort of accommodate or whatever.
And if you have kind of an equal number of men and women, not to be sexist, but not all men like to eat rabbit food, and they're not going to take as much of that.
Exactly. Which will allow somebody else to heap on the salad or whatever.
Yeah, it sort of evens out. But I don't, unless someone has a lethal allergy, or is what do you call it when you can't eat wheat?
Gluten, like when they have an allergy to gluten, or celiac disease.
But that I want to know, because that could create a real danger. But otherwise, it's and if you're that compromised in what you can eat, then just eat before you come.
That's a good point. Just fill up.
But I try to have enough variety of what everybody can eat, and hope it works itself out.
This is a great question. Somebody wants to know, how many sets of china do you own?
Oh gosh. I don't know, too many. But I use them. All this talk about minimalism and everything. I'm like, I need all that china and all those shoes. I do.
Absolutely. Another comment from my mom, who has joined in. She's talking about how she's so inspired after a year of not entertaining. She's forgotten about all the pretty things she has, and she can't wait to shop her house and set the table and have a party.
Oh, did you pay her to say that?
I did. I just Venmo'd her $200 underneath.
Way to go, Mom. That makes my day. Thank you for saying that. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mom.
True. We've got to shop our party closets and get ready.
Wonder what it's like to be mother of Steele.
Please. Another great question. Where do you store everything? Do you have a party closet? We wrote an article on Veranda.com about how the party closet was the most indispensable room in the house.
It is great. We do have kind of a generous storage sort of prop closet in the basement
I
with
love
all sorts of things that I try to keep organized. And then we have quite a bit of storage at the ranch of shelves. You know, New York, of course, as those of us who live here know, is a different story, but I have managed to carve out a little bit of a china closet with lots of shelves in it.
I love it. Do you ever find, I'm curious about this, do you find you're in California and you're, you know, ready for a party and you're like, oh no, that set or that, you know, thing that I want is in New York? I mean, how do you kind of bounce back and forth?
You know, every now and then I'll think, oh, that would have been so pretty here. But there's such different looks. I mean, it's kind of the same with clothes.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
like
I'm sort of a boots and jeans out there and
Right.
things look more sort of, you know, grandma prairie out there. And here is, you know, it's just a different, more buttoned up sort of.
That makes sense. So your house and your party closet essentials kind of naturally fall in line as well.
They sort of do, yeah. You know, place dictates, our sense of place dictates so much of
I
what we
think
want.
so.
I think things look silly when they're, you know, sometimes.
Yeah, I think so for sure. I love that. Let's see, we maybe have one more question. I think I covered that one. Just lots of thanks. Thank you for sharing your beautiful paintings and that you're such a star, which is so true.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. You know, does anybody remember that show that was on public radio, the Car Talk show?
I used to listen to it every Saturday.
And at the end, they always said, you've wasted another perfectly good hour. Thank you for wasting your perfectly good hour with Steele.
I miss it so much. They had me in stitches every Saturday morning.
And remember, he laughed so loud. He had that laugh like that. It was hysterical.
The cackle. I love it. I love it. Well, y'all, I think that does bring us to the end of our hour. I'm checking our time. We're right on time. And Frances, thank you so much for sharing this. I echo all of the comments that this was truly inspiring, and I can't wait to have a party myself.
Oh, yes.
Maybe even for you next time we can bring you to Birmingham.
I can't wait. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Well, thank you to our hosts too, and to all of everybody in our audience. This was so much fun. I can't wait to do it again.
It was, yeah.
Take care, everybody. Enjoy spring. Bye.
Are we gone?